Welcome, everybody, to an episode of Brains Behind AI. Today, we have Kordel France. Kordel is the founder and CEO of Seekar Technologies, a technology startup that builds artificial intelligence products for a variety of industries. Seekar, while still a startup, has put 3 different medical AI products through 4 board-reviewed clinical trials. In response to COVID-19 pandemic, Seekar contributed 2 products free of charge to physicians to help ease demand on medical staffing and screening for the virus faster. They are currently building the first clinical AI tool used to advise neuropsychologists in diagnosing mental disorders. Kordel graduated from Utah State University with a Bachelor of Science degree. He received a Master of Science degree in Artificial Intelligence from Johns Hopkins University and a graduate certificate in Machine Learning and AI from MIT. Kordel, welcome to the show.
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Natalie.
Of course.
Yeah, Kordel, what an impressive background. Before we dive into the company, let's take a minute to learn about your journey. And if you can tell us, how did you sort of end up in AI and in this world, especially with the healthcare type of applications that you're building and developing now? Where did it start and how did it lead to where you are?
Sure. So it started when I was a kid. So I actually grew up on a farm, and my father had some autonomous driving software for these large tractor machinery. And I remember seeing that as a kid, seeing these large machines steer themselves autonomously. That kind of triggered my interest in robotics and AI and trying to make things, automate themselves. And so the seeds kind of started from there. And just kind of carried that into that interest into school. I've always excelled in math, and so that played heavily into AI and computer science, and carried that into my undergrad degree, which resulted in a few jobs in the defense industry, where I worked as an engineer for a couple of different disciplines. And mechanical engineering, systems engineering, and also software engineering. So I got to see a lot of different unique aspects of product development, just given those different engineering disciplines. And what I was working on mostly there was autonomous systems, and so that just kind of kept feeding the fire of intriguing me more and more. And fast forward to about 2 years ago, a colleague or my co-founder Zach Newman and I decided to fully start Seekar and begin working on it more and more in our free time. And about 6 months later, we actually ended up leaving our full-time jobs and pursuing customers and seeking revenue. And it's haven't looked back. It's been excellent since then. But that's kind of the path, I guess, of which the AI, my interest in AI started and progressed to where it is today.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It seems like you had a very interesting, impressive job in the defense sector. What made you say, let's leave this behind and venture into the startup? Was there a calling? What got you leave a safe corporate job and go into a startup world?
It was a very, very tough decision. I had an excellent job and I really enjoyed it, and I was learning a lot, had a lot of great mentors. And it was honestly working on things that I loved. So it was a really difficult decision. However, my true passion and interest is artificial intelligence, and the defense sector is really difficult. They're not very amenable to AI right now for a variety of reasons, right? Because the consequences of an artificial intelligence system being wrong in something that's so sensitive, such as defense and medicine, is very hard to fathom and very hard to handle that level of autonomy over for those types of decisions. So it's very hard to kind of move fast in that sense and really incorporate AI into products. And so Zach and myself decided to change that. We wanted to start Seekar to try to develop artificial intelligence systems for all industries in general, but industries that are explainable, that can explain themselves just as a physician can, just as a soldier can. And so that kind of opens up opportunities and opens up different industries to being more amenable to accepting artificial intelligence into products that can augment people's capabilities instead of necessarily replacing them. So really, I mean, I guess one of the primary reason was the fact that it was hard to see a lot of AI development, at least in my particular field in the defense industry. There wasn't a lot of interest and focus because of these systems are black boxes. They're not very explainable. And so that's what Zach and I set out to try to fix.
Yeah. And with AI, there is a lot you can do, right? And you're already tapping into multiple industries. But where did you start when you and your co-founders started working on AI? Maybe it started on site. What was your focus? Where did you guys start?
We started solely in image recognition. So we were actually building image recognition systems for optic systems for outdoors. So actually like spotting scopes for rifles and spotting and different optics such as binoculars. So as an example, if someone looks through binoculars or through a rifle scope and sees an endangered animal, we actually have active recognition on that system that said, hey, you don't obviously make an action because this is an endangered species. You can't actually go after this animal. So conservation was a heavy first sector. And then it was interesting because it's in defense, it's classified as target recognition, but it's image recognition everywhere else. So being able to bridge that into other industries such as medicine was really quite easy once we required the necessary expertise. Now, we didn't have any medical expertise to begin with, so we had to go out and seek that to kind of have some advice on how to go about building different things. And the COVID-19 pandemic actually positioned us at a very good point for that. We decided to take our image recognition technology and partner with some medical experts who knew a lot more about the medical field and radiology in particular than we did. So we took our image recognition platform and built a mobile application that that you can use to screen for different radiology conditions in an X-ray or a CT scan. So our goal with it was to make screening for COVID-19 easier, particularly for radiologists and radiology technicians. So, for example, the app allows you to either import an X-ray image or to capture an X-ray image, like just a picture of the screen, and the AI will go through and read out all the optical glares, read out all the text that's on the image, and actually give you a feedback and classify whether or not the image contains signs of pneumonia or COVID-19 or emphysema or other conditions to try to help, speed people off and divert them into the appropriate medical attention that they needed. And so it was really a great opportunity for us in order to kind of bridge our image recognition technology into something to really benefit an urgent demand of the world right now. And it was wildly successful. We actually put it through a clinical trial as well, and that turned out phenomenal as well.
That's amazing.
Wow, no, that's fascinating. So did you really start with like each industry at a time? So you were like, okay, we're gonna tackle this one first, maybe like the defense and then go into healthcare. Because I know you're in so many different industries now and you're growing so fast. Did you just really take each one at a time? Or was it like, did you just branch off at once after you really tackled the medical industry as well with COVID-19?
Yeah, so there's a couple different reasons on the way we skipped around. So we had a lot of interest in outdoor recreation and animal conservation to begin with, which was shocking. That's not something that we would have thought of in the beginning. So that's where we started. But there's some concerns, right, with AI and being used in that manner and actually being used with autonomous weapons and such. And that's not something that we really advocate and really wanted to focus on, and really wanted to try to break into that medical realm. And so that's COVID-19 was a perfect segue for that. So since then, most of our focus has been on medicine. We've done a few things in autonomous systems like self-driving and drones and things like that. But really, once we developed COVID AI, which was that radiology app, it actually just kind of opened up a plethora of other medical opportunities for us that allowed us to shift our focus almost entirely.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So I want to sort of understand, right? You're working on various artificial intelligence technologies, and it's cutting across industries. Um, how did you? So one of the important moment for a company and a startup is when someone starts paying you for the service or the application you provide. So was it with the COVID, or was there something? What got you? What was the first moment where you converted your technology into dollars?
So yeah, COVID, that product of COVID was actually fully donated. That was entirely for free, just to help the cause, and really just try to make medical field more amenable to artificial intelligence solutions. So we didn't make any money on that, and that was by design. But the and our funding up till that point was actually from more of the recreational and security and defense sector. So that was really where the money started. But after COVID AI, after that donated app, that's when we started seeing more monetary revenue from healthcare and from medicine. And it wasn't really a big shift for us. We kind of had to acquire different expertise on how to design and look for different things within images and signals, and we branched out into audio and different signal recognition. But transferring that technology or Seekar's technology from one sector to another wasn't really that difficult once we had the necessary advisors to kind of guide us along the way on what to look for in certain images. Um, and really what Zach and I set out to do in general with Seekar doesn't change in either industry. We developed Seekar to be to be basically founded on four principles, and that is to make artificial intelligence mobile, to make artificial intelligence ethical, to make it explainable, and to make it plastic, to basically make it dynamic so that it can behave as the brain does. And when you deploy an artificial intelligence model, it continues to evolve and learn and get better with time instead of staying stagnant. And so those four principles basically are kind of embedded in every product we do, whether regardless of industry. And that's kind of what has garnered our attention or garnered interest in our products so far.
Wow. How'd you come up with the name Seekar Technologies?
So it's yeah. So like there's a couple. Zach and I kind of met in an intersection of two different thoughts. So coming from defense, I was involved with optics and missile seekers, right? So that's the eye of an airframe at times, right, where it's trying to navigate its way around. And we used AR for augmented reality, and Zach is a big fan of being able to seek to understand something before you actually. We have an inside joke where we have some old friends that really they talk before they actually think, and so we always say seek to understand before you make it an actual comment about something or pretend So that's kind of where it intersected, and the name just stuck after a few days.
Yeah, no, that's a cool name. So, in terms of your business, right, are you mostly consulting other companies and providing the software, or it's software as a service?
Right now, it's software as a service. So we started out building under contracts for certain companies or for different companies, building out different products, and I can elaborate on those in a moment. But it's a software as a service right now, where we're actually building out our software under those four principles to be licensed in different for different companies and different individuals in general. So being able to make artificial intelligence explainable is really it's a big topic right now in AI, and that we need to be able to explain its decisions and make it not so black boxish. We got to be able to trust these AI systems in order to gain more people to support it and support its development. And so we actually print out reports and can explain every decision a neural network makes with our technology. So part of that platform that we license out is incorporates that. We have a huge focus on mobility. So actually not tying anything to a cloud. So a lot of these artificial intelligence models are tied to a cloud because they're very large, right? And so it takes time to have to transmit a classification request to the cloud and receive an answer back. We don't do any of that. We are part of our technology is being able to compress everything small enough to fit on the device, and make everything so small that you actually protect patient or people's data that way, because there's not something transmitted back and forth, and it just runs faster and more in real time. There's also quite a bit of emphasis on ethics right now, with AI. So if you guys are familiar with, you've seen a lot in the news, I'm sure. Facial recognition seems to have gotten a lot of heat because it seems to be, it misclassifies. It seems a lot more often than we thought it did. I think Harvard Business Journal, or Medical Journal rather, did or posted a review that on a study that they did, that darker skinned folks were 35 times more likely to be misclassified than lighter skinned folks. And that's a result of really bias in the data that the artificial intelligence agent was trained on, and can be solved through better engineering. So we take a particular interest and a particular sensitivity in actually going through the data and making sure that everything is addressed from multiple angles to try to rid as much bias from the data as possible. And that's particularly advantageous in realms such as medicine, where a misclassification has very dire consequences. And so that's kind of the core behind what we're building and what we designed so far. And briefly on that fourth point, that fourth core principle, in dynamic, making these models dynamic. If you build an artificial intelligence model or neural network, it's basically deployed and it's done. It's if it classifies 5 different objects, it's never going to classify more than 5 different objects, and it's never going to learn to classify anything different. Ours learn over time, and they update themselves while also maintaining accuracy and consistency, and also pruning away things that it doesn't need to classify anymore.
Yeah, very impressive. How big is your company now? Have you grown, added more people?
Yeah, we've grown quite a bit. We're at 11 people right now.
Yeah, and when did you guys start?
We officially started in middle of 2019 or beginning of 2019. And yeah, so we officially started in the beginning of 2019 and went full time in middle of 2019. So left day jobs and fully incorporated into middle of 2019. So
Yeah,
been profitable since.
Oh wow, that's super impressive. And given that you're profitable, do you still work with venture capitalists? Are you raising, or are you self-sufficient given how things are structured and have taken off?
We are self-sufficient right now for the way things are taking off, but we're actually raising a round of funding this summer. So we've actually started that process already. So we are speaking with venture capitalists and investors of different types to try to raise money, because we have big plans, and that's going to take a bigger team in order to pursue, in order to actually manifest everything that we want in our vision to come about. So we are seeking funding right now. It's going through our Series A.
Okay. Well, excellent. You guys are moving at a great speed there. So it's pretty impressive. Now,
Thank you.
In terms of sort of the customers that you work with, one of the things I have noticed is, as I mentioned at the start, AI is an emerging trend. Most companies out there, and especially in healthcare, they're not so comfortable adopting to the new. So how are you navigating that?
It's a great question, and that's part of that explainable tier that we're trying to emphasize in our models. So, at least from what we've encountered, part of the reason that professionals in healthcare aren't adaptable or aren't really amenable to AI solutions is the fact that it can't explain its reasoning. It can't explain what's going on or how it arrived to a certain solution. So being able to explain the process or its logic on how it actually came about with a certain classification is key to our technology, and seems to give people a better feeling and a better, a better opinion of AI in general. So that's at least that's it, from what we've encountered. We've seen that's helped customers feel a lot better, because the engineers on our end get a technical report where we can actually identify which neurons in a neural network fired for a classification. Mm-hmm. And then on their end, they get a less technical report that says, well, you asked me to identify a blue car, and I found an object that has wheels and it has windows, has a bumper, and it looks like a blue car, and here's why. And so, that's a really rudimentary representation of what these reports are, but it paints the picture effectively. That being able to explain how it works, or explain its decisions, is key to making our medical professionals adopting AI. Another thing is making it user friendly and making it making it protect patient privacy. HIPAA compliancy is something that we at Seekar were not at all prepared for when we entered the medical field, because you have to protect patients' information, and you have to handle data in a very, very, very cautious way. It's very good because we implement HIPAA practices throughout all of our products in general. But what HIPAA is, for people who don't know, it's basically a set of laws and practices for medical products and medicine in general that protect patients' data from being misused or being sold, and from making any data that is used for studies traceable back to a patient in any identifying manner. So you have to take some very strict and extra precautions in order to actually be legal as a medical product. And that took quite a bit of tuning in our databases, and quite a bit of convincing, at least from us, to the medical professionals, and that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that patient's data is not exposed, nothing that identifies the patient is exposed, and we're appropriately handling data. Our encryption algorithms are sound, all of that.
No, that's so interesting. And that's going to segue really into my next question. Just on a day-to-day basis, or even from now, since 2019, have you really dealt with any challenges, maybe roadblocks, or anything in your whole sector of your business where you're like, "Whew, didn't see that one coming."
Yeah. Given that 6 months into your business, you went into pandemic.
Exactly. Even though you created this amazing product for COVID, which is incredible, but any additional challenges that you might have encountered?
Yeah, I think that was a hard decision, actually, to figure out whether or not we should spend time on donating something where we could probably figure out how to pursue the platform in a different manner. But it was ultimately one of the best decisions we've made. I think it's one thing that we've learned, and that's quite appealing, and one thing we've tried to focus on, is there is quite a bit of investment in artificial intelligence in a few specific industries. There's a lot of investment in self-driving cars. There's a lot of investment, not just in money, but in time and attention and research. A lot of self-driving cars, certain aspects of medicine, and kind of like smart home assistants, that type of stuff. And there's a lot of people that are pretty savvy in AI and how it can be used and what the limits of it are, and what they can trust and what they can't trust. There's some other industries that are of a disadvantage, and agriculture is one of those. Recreation, some aspects of medicine as well. And when they don't quite understand AI or how it can be solved to their business practices, but once you explain it to them, they light up, and they get very enthusiastic. And they go, "Well, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this?" And that's something that we've actually gotten quite a bit of acceptance from, is some industry or some business from industries that we wouldn't have typically expected otherwise are quite enthusiastic and contribute quite a bit heavily to our funding, because they just didn't know the applications that can be performed with artificial intelligence, because there's not a lot of attention in their fields. So that was kind of a unique learning lesson that we've encountered along the way. Another thing is how hard marketing is and how hard sales is. It's AI kind of sells itself in some regard, because it's kind of a hot topic right now anyway. But being able to actually paint a picture for your clients, or for your users, for your customers, that enables them to want to buy the product, and enables them to see the value that you see, or the vision that you see, that is probably the most difficult thing, at least for me, because I see the potential of AI in so many different ways, and I see how it can affect so many different lives, and how different the forks in the road can be between whether a company has AI or they don't. Mm-hmm. And trying to convey that vision to customers has been something that I've struggled with, and I've definitely gotten better at over time, in order to try to kind of market Seekar.
Yeah, and I will say, when I was like looking more into your company, I did notice that you were in the, like you said, the outdoor recreation, the agri-science, and even the sports sector, which I thought was really cool. So
Yeah,
different.
absolutely. We're kind of spread across the spectrum, which speaks a lot to kind of like how our platform can be provided, or how those four principles can provide value in several different industries, right? Um, and go just to elaborate on sports and recreation for a moment. We're trying to that second tier of Seekar for mobility, we're trying to kind of pack more power into the thing that sits in your pocket. So I mean, we went to the moon with thousands of times more compute power, or thousands of times less compute power rather, than what we have in our phones, which is quite astonishing. So there's a lot of potential in our smartphones that we're not really using. And so we're trying to pack a lot more capability with artificial intelligence, products and mobile applications, by doing so. So as an example, we were able to, if anyone goes skiing or snowmobiling or cross country hiking or whatever in the winter, avalanches are a big concern, and you have to carry a transceiver. And my co-founder is a lot more. He's a lot more adept at this, and goes, exercises these tasks a lot more often than I do. But this transceiver is basically a beacon in case you get into an avalanche, and someone can find you, and it's basically broadcast an SOS signal. We were able to pack all of that functionality into a mobile app that effectively acts the same way, uses very little power, can last up to 16 hours on your phone if you don't have, if you're not using anything else, right? You don't, and doesn't need service, doesn't need cell service. It uses quite a bit of technology that I can't really dive into at the moment, but it replicates the functionality of this $600 device into an app that you can download for free. So we're effectively, saving more lives, and benefiting a different sector. I mean, who you wouldn't have thought that AI would have been able to help people in avalanches, at least I wouldn't originally. And so that was kind of another sector that we were able to branch into and enlighten people on. That was really great.
Yeah, that's impressive. I want to understand in terms of going to market, and you've created these amazing solutions and solved some interesting use cases. Do you go meet with a client, find someone in the industry and then work with them in coming up with a solution or an application, or you build something in the lab and then you take it out? What is your go to market?
So we originally started by just meeting with clients and trying to tailor an exact solution to what they wanted, because we were really trying to fill the market out in general, to see kind of where things would go and where things would vector. Now we have a platform that we have a different marketing strategy for, and that it can be used for different industries and different customers. But our platform has been built to be on several different processors in different industries, different use cases, and so the marketing scenario changes a little bit each time. So, for example, for our medical platform, it's a general platform that is licensed out with a request that you can actually make changes if you'd like. So we can, for additional cost, we can go in, and instead of identifying, these 7 different respiratory conditions in the CT scans and X-rays, we actually, they want to identify a different 7 conditions, or they want to add 3 more to it. We can go in and retrain the model specifically, and we're building a system out to automate that, so that we don't really have to be as in the loop. So it's kind of more seamless for customers. But the base platform is licensed out, and then we can tailor it if needed.
Yeah. And my next question is, a lot of our listeners are technologists. They're really good at building products, but where some of them struggle is going to market. It's interacting with clients and finding the customer and then building on it. One thing I noticed is you guys have done an amazing job getting traction and being revenue producing very, very quickly. So I want to see if you want to share any tips to emerging and aspiring entrepreneurs out there. How should they go about when it comes to selling and sales?
Yeah, that's a great question. To us, and this sounds very, very specific, but actually putting some of our capabilities into a mobile app helped a lot, because it's something that people are familiar with, something people can download on their phone, something people can look at and actually interact with. They've always got it on them. And it's something familiar, right? If you're going to put this brand new capability, this awesome technology that you put blood, sweat, and tears into, you want to make sure it gets the attention it deserves. And so if you have an appropriate vehicle that people are familiar with, that they're willing to actually interact on it, that seems to have helped us quite a bit. Because a lot of AI solutions is they're developed in the lab and they maintain great accuracy under lab conditions, but then once they go to deployment, they don't get as much traction, or it's harder to actually reap the results that you acquired in the lab. And we saw that with COVID AI and with some of our neuropsychology projects that we worked on, is that we were able to perform adequate assessments in the lab, but it didn't really, it didn't work as well in the field. And usability is a big deal. You need to make sure you have a very, very, very sensitive amount of time to capture a user's attention and to capture a customer's attention. And if you don't, then I mean, you could potentially be blacklisted in their mind forever. They're not going to give your app the time of day. They're going to go delete it, or they're not even going to pursue you any further. So, and I'm going to go back in regards to apps again, but if you go to download an app and you don't get a good impression within the first 30 seconds, you probably won't go back to it. You're not going to create a profile. You're not going to go in and give more interaction to it. So being able to make something that's appealing and that's something that people will want to, use right away, that kind of attracts them right away, will give your technology the attention it deserves. And, it's not necessarily a mobile application, but that has definitely worked for us so far, just because it's so familiar.
Thank you. I think that's amazing advice to share with everyone. And I did want to ask, so where do you see Seekar Technologies, let's say 3 or to 5 years from now?
So the way in the direction that we want to go with the company, we really want to set a standard for artificial intelligence in being explainable and being mobile, and try to really branch out these industries that aren't getting a lot of attention with AI. So, we're not pursuing a lot of work in autonomous vehicles because there's so much concentration in there. We're trying to branch out and give AI capabilities to these other industries. So our goal is to be able to say that there is adequate attention, and there's adequate investment, both with time and research and money, into these other industries, such as agriculture, such as security, different aspects of medicine, recreation, energy, all these different fields. And we hope to be a huge contributor of that. Also, being able to make sure that data sets for these models aren't biased, and there's perhaps a way to provide a certification on a data set or a model to say, hey, it's been adequately approved and adequately vetted. More of like an FDA or an FAA standard, if you will, that is all over an artificial intelligence model that says it's ethical. We, believe that there's not a lot of bias in that. Seekar hopes to be a big contributor in that field, and it's in segueing into explainability from that. So being able to explain decisions so that we can adopt more trust with artificial intelligence and reap more benefits. If we can provide a way and an easy interface for AI models to explain their decisions and find out where they went wrong, I think people will garner a lot more trust with it. So that's where we hope to take our products and everything in the future with our platform, at least in the near future.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like your focus on explainability. I know an industry that can use it is financial services, and I've had a few interesting conversations there where one of their biggest concern is they don't want their machine learning models and deep learning models to be able to look at certain zip codes and demographics and make decision and judgment that are biased inherently. So one of the key things that if they implement the models, I think one of the key things that they want to have is make sure they can explain every single decision, down to why that decision was made by the machine learning model.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. There was a flash crash. It was many years ago, but the stock market had a flash crash where it briefly dropped by like to like 20% or 40% of its previous level, and then jump back up within a matter of just a few minutes. And that was at the fault of algorithmic trading systems. And so he was burned on algorithmic trading. He's like, I just, because of that, because he lost a little bit of money, and he said, I'll never trust a bot or an AI system to handle my money, because it burned me on that, and I didn't get the value that I thought I would, and a human would have been able to sell out right away in an appropriate manner. And so events like that have to be limited, and we're inevitably going to have more. But being able to provide, sets of explainability along the way, or even, an explainability of trend lines, saying, I see a change in the data set coming, and I think that, the operator, the human, should be aware. In instances like you're suggesting, I think that might be, pretty paramount and pretty important.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, last question for you is, what advice would you give to the aspiring entrepreneurs that are thinking about leaving the corporate world or in college looking to work on AI startups?
Sure. The first thing I would suggest is to seek negative feedback. It's very hard to, kind of hurt your ego, and no one wants negative feedback because it's very difficult. But negative feedback allows you to kind of adjust the sails on your product so that you don't, steer off course for too long and decide that you're sinking so much time into one direction when you could have been going in a different direction. So I think going through that very, very difficult process of being extremely critical of your idea, of your technology, and seeking negative feedback is important. However, on the other hand, there's no one that's going to realize your vision like you are. And so if something is important enough to you, you have to take that negative feedback into consideration for your customers, but also be willing to sift through what actually is relevant and what actually can be explained. Maybe you can explain your technology better, and negative feedback might not be appropriate in some manners. But I think that's quite important to have that negative feedback loop. Additionally, I think it's important to question the status quo, obviously, and I know that's cliche, but AI is a incredibly transformative technology. I mean, it's synonymous now to what the internet was in the 1990s, and then that its potential is very untapped. We're largely still experimenting with a lot of the things it can do, and its capabilities are largely untouched. And so that allows smaller players to enter the market and really make a big impact on, the market, but also the direction in which artificial intelligence is developed in general. And so you have a right to question the status quo, because you have tools now that you can address problems with differently than what we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's very important, to remain conviction on your vision, but also definitely seek that negative feedback.
Thank you. Of course, great, valuable advice. But I'm going to ask you now one last question and put you in the hot seat. What is one thing that you can name that has made you successful?
Obsession.
I guess a good answer.
Yeah. In a singular word, definitely obsession. I've being obsessed over the potential that Seekar can provide, or artificial intelligence in general. Maybe it's not Seekar, but just the potential that AI has in the future. And being able to communicate that to people and try to realize the vision that my team and I have for everyone else, and how it can augment humans' capabilities instead of replace human capabilities, is probably the singular thing that I think has helped, that I could contribute, that's helped along the way. That and coding.
All right, Kordel, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. This was super informational. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy startup guy, so we really appreciate you taking the time and spending it with us.
Thank you both for your time. Thank you both for the opportunity. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm going to continue listening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kordel. Appreciate it.